COVID, the deaths of people with learning disabilities, and how we can help people to stay well and eat well and and feel better about their lives because of this deaths over this year. So we're going to try and make people's lives better by doing that. So the first speaker to speak.
Can I just do some housekeeping? Is that okay?
Oh yes, forgot
Sorry.
about the housekeeping. You do housekeeping.
Right. So welcome everybody, like Gary says, and we are going to talk about some difficult things today, but hopefully some great things that you're all doing to try and help people keep safe. So thank you for all of you for coming. We are recording it. So if you don't want your picture to be on the internet, then you might want to turn your camera off. We're not planning to make it public. We just want to be able to share it with other members because people are really interested, and some people couldn't come because of the time and stuff. We've got a really packed agenda. So Gary and I are going to be dead strict, aren't we, about keeping us to time. And but if you've got comments or ideas or questions, you can use the chat, and we will try and stop and catch up on anything with people. And as Gary says, we've got all of these brilliant speakers, so you know, hopefully we'll all kind of get a chance to listen to loads of different things you're doing. Have I done everything, Gary?
I think so, yes.
Okay. Sorry.
So it's over to we next the first speaker. What
oh, and I didn't say can everybody be on mute if you're not speaking, didn't we? If you can, but if you can't, it doesn't matter. But I think our first speaker is Chris, isn't it?
Oh, please do use the chat room. Forgot that.
Okay. So yeah, so thank you. We're starting off with Chris talking to us about numbers and what we know about what's happened for people with learning disabilities with COVID-19. So I'm going to click for you, Chris. So I'll try and do it, but give me the nod.
Brilliant, thank you. I just did that whole I need to unmute myself thing. Thanks. So so I've got the sort of depressing start of things really, with some quite grim I guess facts and numbers, but then as we go through the session, I think we'll be hearing more positive things about what people are doing, which would be really good to hear. So this is kind of background stuff really. So what I'm going to do is talk through a bit about what we know, particularly about people with learning disabilities who died of COVID, and what this might mean, I guess. So first of all, there's been quite a lot of stuff out about people generally, about I guess who's most at risk of having sort of a bad reaction if they get COVID. So if you know, some people, if they get COVID, they don't even know they've had it. They have no symptoms whatsoever. Some people get really ill, and a small, relatively small proportion of people unfortunately die of COVID-19. So there's been lots of work for people generally about kind of what makes you more at risk. It doesn't mean you're guaranteed to have a bad reaction. It just means that your chances of having a bad reaction might be kind of greater than someone else's. So these are some of the kinds of things that have come out for people across the board, in England and the UK and around the world actually, the kind of things that put people at greater risk of having a bad reaction to COVID-19. So one of them is being older, and for people generally, that's a really big effect. So the older you get, the more chances you have of getting really ill and potentially dying from COVID. And by older age, I'm talking you really get to sort of 75 plus before it starts to really kind of make a massive difference. If you're a man, you're slightly more likely to have a bad reaction and potentially die from COVID-19, but only slightly more. Being from some minority ethnic communities, sees Black and Black British communities and people from Asian and Asian British communities are more likely to have a bad reaction to COVID-19, Although why that is there's a lot of discussion and people haven't really got to the bottom of what that's about, I think. The kind of job you do can make a difference. So certainly early on, for example, if you are kind of a bus driver or a taxi driver, or you're in lots of contact with lots of different people in confined spaces, you'd be more likely to get COVID-19, and people who can work from home obviously will be less likely to get COVID-19 and then to have a reaction to it. If you live in a more deprived area, so an area that's less wealthy, that seems to be linked to being more likely to have a bad reaction to COVID. When obviously lots of these things kind of go together, so it's hard to kind of tease out what's what. And also, generally, if you have a disability where you need some support with sort of general day-to-day stuff, then overall you are more likely to die from COVID. Can I have the next slide, please? And these also, there's lots of talk what this phrase underlying health conditions. Basically, there are some health conditions which, if you have generally, for people across the board, they're more likely to put you at risk of a bad reaction to COVID. Things like dementia, things like diabetes, heart disease, lung disease, but not asthma unless it's really severe asthma, some forms of kidney disease, being very, very overweight, and smoking. So all those are things which increase your risk of having a bad reaction to COVID. So all of that is what we know about people generally. What do we know about people with learning disabilities? Well, there's been some reports that came out very recently looking at information about the deaths of people with learning disabilities in England from COVID-19 and what they mean. So there's a link, there's a report done by Public Health England, and there's a link to an easy read summary of that report there. I say summary, it is quite long, but that's because it goes through a lot of the detail. And from that report and kind of looking forwards, my best guess is that in England, probably nearly 1,200 people with learning disabilities in England so far have died of COVID-19. That's doing a bit of sort of best guess estimating stuff, but we reckon that's the kind of number of people we're talking about. As with people on the whole, the first peak of deaths was in April and May. So there's this big talk about the first wave. The first wave of COVID happened for people generally, and it happened for people with learning disabilities in terms of dying from COVID. Over the summer, there were really very few deaths indeed of people with learning disabilities. And now as we move into sort of October and November, the number of deaths is going up again from that sort of very low level in the summer, but it's not nearly as much as in April and May. So I'm going to show you a graph next. Are you ready? Sam, hit them with the graph. So this shows kind of week by week. So starting from sort of March, which is on the left, and going through up to kind of a couple of weeks ago, it's the latest information we have. So the number of people with learning disabilities who've died of COVID each week over that time. So we can see that in April and May, there was a massive, oh, sorry, is that me? Can I hear my echo there? No, maybe it's gone. So you can see that in the spring, there was a massive increase, a massive spike in the number of people with learning disabilities who died of COVID. So in April, it was about 120 people every week were dying of COVID-19. That dropped quite quickly, as it did for everybody else. You can see over the summer, sort of going along, it kind of drops to zero or near zero in the summer. And then as we get to the right-hand side of the graph, you can see there are more deaths than there were, but it's not going up in that big spike in anything like the way it did in the springtime. So there are more people dying now than there were in the summer, but it's not kind of spiking up nearly as much as it was then, which is a relief in some ways. Next slide, please. So they looked at the numbers, and you can see there that kind of pattern of who's died of COVID-19 and when. They also looked at, as people have for the general population, for people on the whole, who's more at risk. So among people with learning disabilities, who's more at risk of dying from COVID? And being a man, people were more at risk of dying from COVID, again, slightly more likely if they were a man. People from some minority ethnic communities, as with people on the whole, were more likely to die from COVID-19. And one thing that's come up from this and other work is that people with Down syndrome are more likely than other people with learning disabilities to die from COVID-19. And again, we don't understand much about why that is yet. It might be linked, I guess, some people with Down syndrome having dementia, you know, sort of earlier in their adult life than people generally do, but we don't know. The report also found that most people with learning disabilities who died from COVID-19 died in hospital. So they were in hospital when they died, rather than necessarily where they lived. 8 out of every 10 people who died from COVID-19 died in hospital. For people generally, it's about 6 out of every 10 people. So that might mean that that people are at least getting to hospital for treatment, but we also don't know whether it's because people aren't getting the best treatment possible when they're in hospital. So we don't really know what that's about. They also found that care homes for people with learning disabilities were less likely to have a COVID outbreak than care homes for older people. So there's been lots of stuff in the news about care homes for older people and COVID-19 and kind of what a risk that is for people. For people with learning disabilities, we think probably because the care homes are a lot smaller than some of the really big care homes for older people, that helps protect against outbreaks from COVID-19. But we don't know much about people living in other kinds of places. Now, I want to talk about age and risk of death, because I think this is really important when we go on to think about vaccinations. So for people generally, basically, if you're aged 75 years or older, you're most at risk. And for people generally, the risk for anyone aged under 65 is really low, really low. But for people with learning disabilities, the risk does increase with older age. So the older you are, the more likely you are to die from COVID-19. But the risk is higher than for people generally across all adult ages. So it's not just about people over 65 or 75, it's about people who are younger. And the most common age for people to die from COVID-19, if you're a person with learning disabilities, is between the ages of 55 and 64 years. That's partly because there are a lot of people with learning disabilities aged 55 to 64 years, and there are not as many older people with learning disabilities. Next slide, please. This is a graph from the report, and it's really kind of complicated, but I guess it's just to show this has got age groups along the bottom, so whether you're 18 to 34 years old, 35 to 44 years old, and then the grey columns that you can see are the risk of death at each age for people generally, and you can see it's really low going across the board, and it only really goes up if you're age 75 plus. And then the black and white column, and if you look at the column as a whole, is the risk of death for people with learning disabilities. And you can see that starts to go up from age 35 to 44, and it keeps going up across the age range. So much higher risk, particularly when people are younger. So for people with learning disabilities, I think trying to protect people from infection is an issue across the age range, across the adult age range. It's not just an older people thing, it's all adults. Next slide, please. So I guess there's been lots in the news about vaccines and when vaccines are going to come out, and they're going to be soon. I guess one thing to think about is who's going to be first in the queue. So who's going to get it first and who's going to have to wait? And obviously, the longer you have to wait, the more potential risk you've got of getting COVID. So who's going to be first in the queue? At the moment, the recommendations that are being put out is that everybody age 65 or over and care workers who are in care homes for older people will get it first. So it's kind of like all other adults in care homes and care workers, then people aged 75 plus, 70 plus, 65 plus. So everybody aged 65 or over will get it first. That's over 10 million people. Only once they've done all of that will they turn to people aged under 65 who are what are called clinically extremely vulnerable. And there's a list of conditions. Down syndrome is on that list, but it's things like kind of severe kidney disease, who will get the vaccine next after all the older people in England have got it. Once they've got through that, then you go to people aged under 65 who are what's called moderate risk, and this is things like heart disease or asthma, and then other people. So that's at the moment what has been proposed as who's going to get the vaccines first. Next slide, please. But I think this is a real problem for people with learning disabilities. Because if you start with vaccines for everybody aged 65, this will miss pretty much all adults with learning disabilities. So the vast majority, almost all adults with learning disabilities are aged under 65. So not many people with learning disabilities will be included in the kind of age 65 plus vaccination. So I reckon that that means that over 10 million people, older people, will get the vaccine before anyone aged under 65. Even people who are on this clinically extremely vulnerable list, who are, who are thought to be at very high risk. And this also puts almost all people with learning disabilities well down the queue for the vaccine, even when we know that the risk of death from COVID-19 is higher for people with learning disabilities than most people who are aged 65 to 74. So even though younger people with learning disabilities are at higher risk, they won't get the vaccine until much, much later on, or they'll be much further down the queue. Next question. God, next slide. It's not going well, is it? Oh, that's it. There we go. Hey, I've done it already. So, so I think that vaccines should be a much higher priority for people with learning disabilities than they are now.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you very, very much. That was really helpful. I think a couple of people have talked about problems with sound. I could hear Chris all the way, so I'm sorry if some of you couldn't. I don't know whether it's our end or I don't know. I'm sorry. We have chance for one or two questions now, or we can move on and catch them up at the end. I mean, I found that really helpful, Chris, because for me it gave me things that we need to be thinking about to help everybody keep safe and not assume, like you say, that for the rest of the population it's older people, but actually it's more people with learning disabilities who need to be thinking about making sure they're keeping safe. Does anybody have a question?
There's some questions that come on chat, I think.
Okay. Some people were agreeing with Chris about the vaccine, and I can see in the chat that some people were saying that where staff teams were bigger, they had more outbreaks of COVID, because it's that whole thing about more people working together and living together, you're more likely, maybe. Yeah. But also, one person said care homes for people with learning disabilities have higher staffing levels, so maybe they manage to keep in control of infection better. So there's maybe different points.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. If that's all right. So Karen's asked, do we know why the death rate is higher for adults with learning disabilities?
How long have you got? I think not very long. I think it's because, oh, bless you. People with learning disabilities are more likely to be in the kind of conditions that don't help. So you might be kind of living in a poorer area, for example. You might be living in something like kind of quite a big care home, which puts you more at risk than for some other people. Also, people are more likely to have some of the health conditions that put people at risk. So things like heart conditions, for example, which won't help. And also, possibly, people are less likely to get good healthcare when they do have COVID, and we're not so sure about what's happening there. But certainly we know with things that have happened about DNAs, for example, that maybe people are less likely to get the kind of health treatment that they need. The symptoms are less likely to be spotted if they're kind of urgent and life-threatening. So I think all of those things are a sort of triple whammy, really.
Great, thanks, Chris. And Karen has put in the chat that Keyring support people to live in their own homes, and they're at really low levels of COVID. Very few people have been infected, you know, so that's great. And she's agreeing about the vaccine. And Phil is saying we need to be really careful about how we talk about this, because we don't want to make people feel more anxious and more worried, and we absolutely agree. And I think that's the dilemma that we have at Learn Disabilities England over the summer. Chris met with some people with Learn Disabilities and some of us in the team, and we talked about, should we talk about this information? And people said we should talk about it because people need to know. But as I said, we're going to be talking about difficult things today, so it's really important that people get the chance to talk it through with somebody, or, you know, test it out. And any of us are happy to talk about it afterwards. But this is the truth of what's happening. Gabby, go on.
I was gonna say, the government are giving out free medicine. 1 minute they're saying one thing, and the next they're telling us another thing, and I don't think it's very fair on we're learning disability. That 1 minute we get to one thing, and then that we get to another, because we want to get out there, have a normal life. Like, I have been out, but I haven't been out since it all started. And for me, my mental health is really important, and I don't want my normal life back.
Yeah, absolutely, Gabby, and I don't think you're alone. And in fact, I don't want everybody else, but you've beautifully led on to our next presentation, because I think Phil's point and your point about mental health and how we keep going is partly why we asked Speak Up, and our colleagues Vicky, Alison and Jodie, who I'm hoping, yeah, you're all there, I can see you on my screen. I'm going to share your presentation in a second, to talk about what they are doing, because your point about information, they've done loads of self-advocacy groups all over the country, have done loads to try and help their members understand what's going on, and to help each other keep going, because there's been some tough times and they might carry on as well. I think, as Gary said, we've got winter. So I'm going to share their presentation again. And I'll hand over now to Jodie, Vicky and Alison. Are you there?
Yes.
Hooray. Welcome. Thank you. So go on, tell us about what you've been doing through COVID.
Well, firstly, whoever doesn't know me, I'm Jodie. I'm a salaried worker as a Speak Up, as an expert by experience, and a trainer and a computer worker. And I've led on projects and been to loads of conferences. And I've been part of the integrated care system, work with another friend of mine.
My name's Alison. I work at Speak Up. Also, I'm a full pay. I do get a salary, and also I sit on different meetings. And also, I'm a bus buddy trainer, and I do training, and I support people to appointments and that. And I'm a good advocacy for people with learning disability.
Hello, my name is Vicky. I work at Speak Up beside of Alison and Jodie. I'm a side worker as well. I'm also a bus buddy and the vice chair on the committee what we have on Mondays. What we've been doing on Zoom recently, and the other thing is I'm also an expert by experience. I do care and achievement reviews for people with learning disabilities and autism.
Brilliant. Welcome all three. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having us. Right, so as we say on here, the first lockdown meant that us at Speak Up had to change the way we work. So we're going to tell you on this presentation what we've done to keep ourselves going through the pandemic. Yeah, sorry, click on. Sorry, Sam. Right, so we've been using Zoom quite a lot to chat with people who are either alone or they just want someone to spend time with, you know, like when we used to visit our friends and family. But at the moment we can't do that. And we sometimes have social evenings where we can get together and have a few drinks together. People are still breathing the fresh air though by going for a walk. And next week we're actually starting some walking bubbles. We also have been working together on our projects very successfully, so they're ongoing. So what we do, we just share the screen like Sam's doing now, and one of us types up, and the rest of us just give our opinions and ideas on the different projects. Click Sam, please. Vicky or Alison, would you like to have a go at reading one?
Yeah. What have we learned from COVID? We have learned to stay together through is by keeping in touch, and anyone who feels down, we can cheer them up. We do interactive things like a quiz, parties, yoga sessions, and pampering sessions. This is to open to lots of other groups.
Yeah, so I'll just say on Tuesday nights, each of us take it in turn each week to come up with a quiz, and everyone can join it. On Wednesday, we've got a colleague who has her own beauty business, and she's able to do pampering sessions on Wednesday. So it could be the hands or the face and in the head. And then special occasions like birthdays, we can have a small party and play a little bit through YouTube. So we have a little dance on YouTube, and yeah, everyone has a great time.
Jodie, do you want me to read this one?
Yes, please.
Yeah. How have we helped people to keep safe? We are all working from home by using Zoom. We call people on their phone and to have a chat and see how people are doing. We put together easy read newsletter to explain what the rules are and what it going on about Coda from the news.
Yeah, so another colleague every week has been doing an easy read newsletter for us, you know, what Boris has said and what the other MPs said about COVID. And they've actually posted them on our website if anyone would like to have a look at them. So we've been doing that every week. Click that. Right, so it's good to keep speaking up with other advocacy groups, and we we still work and have fun with them. We need to keep speaking up, as there is still a lot of stuff happening across the country, and we know that this is absolutely wrong. We may not be able to speak up in person, but we can still use our media to keep in touch. Thanks, Sam. Any of you to finish off?
It is really good to keep. What's that word again?
Connected.
Connected together with other groups. We are working with LD England. See
Seeability.
Is it
Mind. Yeah.
Mind and is
The National Lottery.
Lottery. Is it
Henry Smith Charity.
Henry Smith? Is it charity?
Yeah.
And Sports England to help us do this.
Thanks, Sam.
Thank you. That's you. Thank you very much. That's great. Thank you, all three of you. That's good. So you like lots of people have been doing loads of stuff and changing everything in how you work, haven't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sharing that really freely. So one of the things I think is amazing is that people are up for sharing with each other so much. So thank you very much. Thank you. So I'm going to move us on now to Michelle.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I hope you said. So Michelle is the head of strategic commissioning. That's very grand, isn't it? I'm giving everybody else their grand titles. So Michelle's going to talk to us about, from a commissioner's point of view, from a county council's point of view, what they've been trying to do to help people keep going and stay safe through this. So Michelle, are you there?
I am. Morning, everyone. So yes, I work at Essex County Council, so I understand I've got about 10 minutes. So I wanted to share with you this morning just a few examples of how we've been working with a range of partners to try to support people to adjust and to keep people well throughout the pandemic period. Moving on to the next slide, please, Sam. So, to start with, when lockdown 1 hit, we worked really closely with our Essex Wellbeing Service. So the Essex Wellbeing Service is a service provided by our voluntary and community partners. And it began as quite a universal service, a service for all. But because of the pandemic, we recognised that we were in touch with at least over 4,000 people who have a learning disability or autism, but we weren't in touch with the adult social care. We weren't in touch with everyone with a learning disability or autism. So we wanted to make sure that we enhanced our gateway to support, that we enhanced the Essex Wellbeing Service, and that there were more partners, part of that service, who could best support people who have learning disabilities and autism through the pandemic period. So within the first couple of weeks, we quickly worked with partners known to us, and through a lot was through their goodwill, rather than contracts and funding arrangements. They agreed to work as part of, we called it a Care Navigator Plus network. So basically, many more service providers came together who had that specialist knowledge, skills and experience of supporting people with learning disabilities and or autism, providing them with information, advice and support. So what could now happen was anyone with a learning disability or autism, they could contact the Essex Wellbeing Service by phone or by email. So if they had any queries about, what's going on, can I go out to exercise? What does this new government announcement mean for me that was on the news last night? I'm worried, I'm struggling at home. My employer's told me to come into work tomorrow, but I'm not sure if I should go into work tomorrow. So now we ensured that we had a network of providers who could sufficiently respond to those queries and support people around any anxieties, any practical queries that they had, any concerns about their health, any queries about whether they could go out to exercise, where they should go, what they should do, employment matters where they might be concerned about going to work or being asked to work from home or being put on furlough. And as the lockdown continued as well, anything about, you know, being stuck indoors and where you might start to have relationship matters with loved ones in the house, because you've been indoors for a longer period of time than you usually would. So they're now there to support around those matters. They also produced a directory of support, so not everyone might want to phone, might not want to email, but there's a new directory of support and easy read guides online, so that people can look at guides themselves for some top tips really on how to manage in their own individual circumstances. We also worked with health colleagues with our GP practices across Essex, because we recognised that there were GP registers, but about people with learning disabilities. So there was extensive cold calling, check-in calls, basically to ask how people were doing, if they were okay, what support they might need. And those calls were really well received. And we're continuing to do those on a regular basis to see how people are managing, and if there's anything that they might need, even if it's a food support with getting medicine, or any other practical or emotional wellbeing support. And we work with public health colleagues as well, and we produced with people with learning disabilities and autism a range of videos. So this was to save people needing to make phone calls or needing to read easy read guides. They could just press the button and watch a range of videos, short videos, 2 or 3 minutes each, around what do we mean by social distancing? What do we mean by we have to wash our hands regularly, and support around adjusting to a new routine and keeping healthy. So if you'd like any more information, I've put the web address there. So Stay Connected was another key service that we introduced in the first 2 weeks of lockdown 1. So we were faced with the situation where leisure centres were closed, people couldn't get out, day centres were closed. We recognised that people were at risk of being socially isolated, not being able to get out in person to see friends, familiar faces, family, and that there was a risk to people's mental and physical health deterioration. So we worked with a provider, a voluntary provider called Sport for Confidence, and they worked with us and set up a service within 10 days to target people at greatest risk of social isolation. And they are predominantly occupational therapists and sport coaches. And what they do is through Zoom, they provide a range of activities, so dance sessions, reading groups. So that's the group Zoom sessions, but they also do a lot of one-to-one work around what really is going on in an individual's life that they may need to support with. So they'll produce personalised physical activity, home workout videos, do it with them, and then let the person do that independently. And they'll check in with them as well through a specialised telephone service. So using a piece of equipment called Alcove, which we found really useful in Essex. And they've been providing support to those providers who would normally run day centres, so to help them set up an offer via Zoom or a specialist service, so that people, where the day centres were closed, so that there was some outreach, people were connected to people that they would ordinarily be connected to before lockdown. Would you mind going on to the next slide, please? So finally, I just wanted to talk a bit more about day opportunities and more about the development of outreach. So we have found technology hugely useful in the past months. And one example is our largest provider of day opportunities, day centres for us, is Essex Cares Limited. So they're now offering a 7-day-a-week service. So they're using technology in a range of ways. So one is around, they provide check-in calls to adults known to them through the use of this alcove technology. And they've also developed quite a comprehensive Zoom program. So there's all sorts going on. But ultimately it is around connecting people, supporting people to use Zoom independently, to connect with their family who they don't live with, or friends that they don't live with, or to support them to look online at safe websites for more information, or some art, other fun things to do, and to help people to keep safe. So what we've also found is that family members have joined in, and people that wouldn't ordinarily come together because they used to go to day centres in different parts of Essex, they've now become friends over Zoom, and they wouldn't have met if it wasn't for the Zoom programs being introduced. Would you mind going on to? Thank you. So this is ECL, Essex Cares, an example of their easy read timetable. So they refresh these on a weekly basis, depending on what people are telling them that they would like to see on Zoom. So this is an example that they've shared with us today. And the next slide, please. And then just a few other points. So with our providers, so with those organisations that were providing the day centres, when the day centres were able to reopen, but only up to 15 people, we've been providing a lot of market engagement sessions, we call them. So sessions on Teams or on Zoom with all of those organisations working in Essex to support people through day centres or through digital platforms such as Zoom. So to talk to them about how they're best supporting adults, any challenges that they're facing, how we can work together to ensure that no one is left without support, that everyone's mental well-being and their physical well-being is protected. We've also been undertaking regular communications through something called Provider Hub and Meaningful Lives. So you'll see my background, Meaningful Lives. So Meaningful Lives Matter is our transformation program for the council. So it's around basically taking innovative approaches to improve outcomes for people with learning disabilities and autism. So if you haven't seen it already, we have a Facebook channel, Meaningful Lives Essex, and we produced a video. So this is just one example of a video that we produced to inform adults about the changes to the clinically extremely vulnerable cohort, where adults with Down syndrome have been added to that. So if technology works, I'm just going to play this video because, I probably can't. Sam, would you mind clicking on the link? And it should take us to a 2-minute video so that I can show you an example of a Meaningful Life video that's been produced.
Hey everyone, we are going to give you some important information about the new coronavirus rules to help you stay safe and well. Some people who have caught coronavirus get a little bit sick and they get at home. Others may need them care at the hospital. Sometimes
You need to stop sharing that screen, I think, and then
Yes.
I've had problems with links on Zoom.
Okay, all right, not to worry. You have the, I assume the slides will be shared afterwards. So if anyone would like to see that, then please do click on the link, or ideally join the Meaningful Lives Essex group, and then you'll see all of the other videos that were produced around the social distancing, the adjusting to a new routine, the support around returning to work, as well as the video informing adults with Down syndrome around the CEV update. And I'll stop there and take any comments or questions, please.
Thank you, Michelle. That's my fault. I checked. We have another video in a minute, and I checked that one worked, but I didn't know to check that one. So I'm very sorry. But everybody can find it on Facebook, can't they? You know. So I haven't been able to keep an eye on clicking and the chat. Are there any comments or questions that anybody wants to talk to Michelle about? I mean, I was really struck that thing about ringing people. One of the things we've heard from lots of people who learn disabilities and their families who was that they valued when they were rung up by the council and asked. We've heard of that quite a lot. So not just in Essex, I mean, when it did happen across the country, people were really valued that. And I saw...
there is a comment in the chat about many people don't have access to internet. So we do have, so as I said, I've given a few approaches today and they are focused around the use of technology, but we have introduced comprehensive support for people that don't have access to internet. So throughout, where people do need access to, don't have access to internet but need support, there are social workers out there, volunteers out there, service providers that we work with out there, going to people's homes, perhaps indoors, perhaps not indoors, perhaps just talking from a distance outside, or from across the front garden. But we have worked with partners to seek to ensure that no one is left without information and support. And absolutely, if they don't have access to the internet, it doesn't mean excluded.
Michelle, do you have give out free laptops? Reconditioned laptops like they in this country they do with schools. For pupils. I thought is there something for adults in that kind of thing in Essex?
There is a scheme that's being developed currently. My understanding that it is focused on education and children in the first instance. So my understanding is that would be phase 1, and we'll look at the success of that, and potentially it will be available to adults as well. So we've taken some steps towards that, but we're not. It's not all age at the moment.
Great, thank you. I think it's a really important point about how we're all helping people get online, get used to it, use it if they can, if it works for them. Excellent, thank you, Michelle. So I'm going to hand us on now to Mary, who is from Certitude, and Mary is going to be talking to us about what they have done in Certitude. They to look at what has happened every time somebody dies in Certitude, so that they learn from, could they have done anything better to support somebody? So Mary, are you there?
Yeah, hi, thanks a lot, Sam. Yeah, good morning, everybody. And thanks for the opportunity for us to share what we do. So when somebody dies who we support, we call this, when we look into it, we call it mortality review. So on this first slide, it just says a little bit about who we are to put it in sort of context. So we support about 1,500 people across London, people with learning disabilities, autism, mental health needs, people with multiple disadvantage. We work right across London, and in central London, obviously that's supporting people in very, very big built up areas. Next slide, please, Sam. So I'll just talk through what I'm going to talk to you about. I will just say that time probably won't allow me to go into a huge amount of detail, but I have put my contact details at the end of the presentation. So I'm more than happy for anybody to contact me if you want to talk about this more and find out a little bit more. But in this presentation, I'm going to talk about why we do it, why we review deaths, the aims of the review, the actual information that we look at. We also this year did a coronavirus review, looking at the impact of that on people that we support. And really the key learning that we've taken from our reviews, and then the actions that we've taken. Next slide. So the context, why are we doing this? MENCAP's Death by Indifference report many years ago and then more recently the LEADAR programme, continues to highlight the, the failures in care for people with learning disabilities. Now, whilst we have a very small number of people who die every year, we decided that we would take a really good look at our support for those people up until the point when they die, to really see if there is any learning we can take from that and any actions that we can take that will improve our practice and ultimately prevent people from dying. Next slide. So the aims of the review. So I've set out there lots of the key things that we want this to do. We think it's very important to have consistent reporting, investigating into every death of somebody, and to look at the learning. I think also I've put there supporting families. We really do want to ensure that in supporting families when somebody dies, that we involve them, in the way that they want us to, and in a way that the person who's died would want us to do. And we've really looked at how we can support families a lot more in these very, 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 very sad circumstances. I think it's also been that we've linked with national programmes. For instance, LEADAR, one of our colleagues is a LEADAR reviewer, and it means that she's able to share with us the learning that she's got from looking into the death of people, in another organisation. And that really helps us improve what we're doing. And STOMP as well, stopping the over-medication of people. We can see that really has achieved some very positive outcomes for the people that we're supporting. Next slide, please. So reviewing mortality, so reviewing deaths. We have a very immediate response when somebody dies, which is part of our serious incident procedure. And then we've pulled together a mortality review board, which is me, our director of health, our head of quality, and some other operational colleagues. And we look at all the information relating to the death of somebody, and we try to pull out any patterns or trends and see what learning we can do and actions we can take across the organisation. Next slide, please. This slide sets out the type of information that we look at. Now, we've been analysing the information for 4 years now, and whilst, as I said earlier, there's very few deaths every year, being able to look at that over a period of time does help us to, to pull out some very important things. So, for instance, what we have learned is that our data, it does reflect the fact that people with learning disabilities, people with enduring mental health issues, do die at least 20 years younger than the general population. So 56% of people who've died that we support have died before the age of 64. And we need to do something about that. We've also been able to identify things like the most prevalent, the biggest causes of death for people. And what can we do to prevent that? Next slide, please. And this year we actually did an additional piece of work. So we looked at the impact of coronavirus on the people that we support. And that's across a 7-month period. So from the 1st of March to the end of September. Very sadly, we have experienced a small number of deaths. So 7 people that we support did die as a result of COVID, either confirmed or suspected COVID. What I think is interesting is that all 7 people were being treated for COVID, but on their death certificate, only 4 people's death certificate said that they died as a result of COVID. So that does lead us to think that the you know, are these statistics correct? You know, have more people died, people with learning disabilities died from COVID than actually being reported? Next slide, please. So what are we learning? Well, every time somebody dies, when we look into it, there's always some learning, and it might be just local for that particular team that's worked with the person. So one example I'll give is where somebody had a DNAR, do not attempt resuscitation. That had been agreed with the person and the right people, but the doctor had to do that piece of information. So when the paramedics arrived very late at night, the team was scrabbling around looking for this document. So that's taught, that team and others actually, that we need to get that information in a very visible and handy place. So organisational learning, sorry, the slides, as it's been shown, it's cut out a little bit. But what we have learned is that it's very important to actually really look at the support up to when somebody dies and analyse the data. We've recognised the importance of ensuring that our staff really do have the right skill set to support people, particularly those people who are receiving end-of-life or palliative care. And there has been some very good work by teams supporting people in the last stages of their life, and ensuring that the people died at home where they wanted to die, surrounded by people that they trust and who they love and who love them back. And we've learned that working very well with palliative care nurses, district nurses, community teams, it really does mean that people can be supported to die at home and have a more comfortable death. So that working together with people is so important. Next slide, please. Again, I'll just pick out a couple of things there. Good communication with all parties is absolutely critical to ensuring that people have good health outcomes. Also, we've learned that there's a very great need for strong advocacy for people to ensure that they get the best possible care and support. So, for instance, I mentioned earlier DNARs. Are they being carried out? Is the decision being made with the right people? Also, the need for advocacy in terms of people who die because of diagnostic overshadowing. And what that means is that when a professional, they look at somebody and sometimes they just see a learning disability and they don't really investigate enough about what medical things might be going on for people. And our staff teams have to provide very strong advocacy for people so that they are heard and then, and they are looked at. Next slide, please. So learning, our learning following the very sad deaths of people from COVID. Again, very strong advocacy is really important. Clear guidance for our teams and for all of our teams and people we support has been important. There's been a lot of misinformation and confusing information that's come out from the government. So we pulled together a task team to review all of that information, and so that we had one set of guidelines that our staff knew that they had to follow, and that's been, that's proved to be very good. I think that the importance of regular testing for people we support, staff teams, is very, very important. And we really have campaigned along with many other organisations for everybody to get tested regularly. So for instance, we've found that there's a number of people, so a number of our staff who are asymptomatic, which means that they're not demonstrating the symptoms, but they have received positive tests. And as soon as that happens, they don't come into work. So regular testing is really important. Also, the having very, very, very robust infection and control measures is important. And we've seen that So for instance, in 22 of our shared accommodation services, where one person has had COVID, because people have, you know, they've used the right PPE equipment, as far as possible, they've kept the social distancing, they're continually washing their hands. We have ensured that other people within that shared house haven't also been infected. So following the rules, the infection control rules is so important. Next slide, please. Okay, so actions that we've taken. I'm just going to pull out a few. Fit for the future. This was a very big piece of work that we did. And we mapped everybody's health needs that we support across the organisation. And we matched this information against our staff team's knowledge and skill set. And we identified where there were gaps, skill gaps and knowledge gaps. So we were able to build in additional training modules into our support worker learning and development pathway. But our teams do have the knowledge that they need to have. We've also done monthly health briefings. So this is information that goes out to all of our teams. It goes into each of their email accounts as well. So they can't avoid it. And we've done health briefings on diabetes, on constipation, on epilepsy, you know, a number of different things. Also, we've pulled together health screening resources. So we've recognised that the thing that people die of most, the people that we support, is cancer. So we've identified the top 6 cancers, and we've developed resource packs and easy read information to go out to teams and to individuals. We've also been able to target relevant groups. So because of our investment in our IT systems, we can look across and see, you know, where anybody, a man, for instance, who is in between a particular age that is more susceptible to get prostate cancer, for instance, we can target that team, make sure that they're going and doing the screening, supporting the person to be screened, and that they're getting the right information. Next slide, please. And this is some of the actions that we've taken just in the last few months following the very sad deaths from people. So Buzz, digital support planning system. So we have everybody's support plan is online. And Chris is our online HR system, so that reports everything to do with our workforce. So we've built into these systems monitoring, so that we can see who's had COVID tests, whose tests are positive, and we can see that right across the organisation. We can put in the results that we need to where we need to. And we've also done that with flu jabs as well. So I can, at the push of a button, I can see how many staff across the organisation and how many people we support have had a flu jab. And where those figures are very low, we've been able to take different actions. For instance, in some teams, we've had GPs come and talk to the whole team and the people who live in a shared house about the importance of flu jabs. We've also carried out a huge flu jab campaign to really raise the awareness of that and to tell people how important it is. And we'll do the same for COVID when the vaccines become. And finally, we've also recently, we carried out a sepsis awareness campaign, I think last year. And that was because in the previous year, we identified the people that we support died of sepsis. You know, it can happen very quickly. So from our campaign, it taught our staff what to look out for and what the key signs were. And it has definitely had an impact. You know, I absolutely believe that staff in the last year have saved at least 2 people's lives because they knew what the symptoms were and they acted so quickly to get that person into hospital. So awareness campaigns are incredibly important. We've done the sepsis campaign again because we know that sepsis can present as similar symptoms to COVID. It's just important to reiterate you know, what sepsis looks like. So in summary, I'll just say that the decision to review deaths, despite the very small number of deaths that we experience, it has been a very positive step. And despite the fact that it's a very grim subject matter, without a doubt, it has really improved people outcomes. And I've just put there as a final takeaway, an organisational focus on deaths can prevent them. And so, I'll finish there. But like I say, I've got a lot more information, and I'm happy to share that with anybody if they want to get in touch with me. So I'm not sure if we have time for questions, Sam, but you know, if anybody...
We do have a minute if anybody wants to ask anything. Thank you, everybody. If anybody, I can't manage to read the chat and click slides. It's too much for me. I'm not clever enough.
There's a lot in there, Sam.
There was a huge amount in the chat, isn't there? I know.
I can't read it all.
No, I can't either, Gabby. It's too much for me to read.
I saw about it, and I.
Well, I can rewrite it. I'm saving it all. I've been saving it all.
You've been saving it. But one of the things I heard from Mary that I think is really important is thinking about people dying is always upsetting and it's always worrying. But when an organisation looks at what happened for somebody and why, it can make a difference. We can learn, can't we? And it can mean that the next time the staff team know what sepsis is or something like that. It can help make a difference. So thank you.
My GP passed away sepsis. He was a good GP, got me diagnosed autism. Unfortunately, he died sepsis at a young age in his 40s.
Yeah, so it is one of the things that we all need to know about, isn't it? It's one of those things that happens really fast. Well, if you're ready now, we're going to go, and if that's okay, I'm going to introduce you to Debbie and Alex. I don't think Phil's speaking, but I might have just offended Phil. But hopefully not. They're from Campbell Village Trust, and they're going to talk to us about what they've been doing, and hopefully this time the film's going to work, she says. Let me get that this time. Let me get that back. Thank you very much, Mary. I didn't know whether I said thank you. Thank you very much. So let's get this. So now here are Alex, Debbie and Phil. Is that right?
Yes. Just leave it as Alex and Debbie.
Alex and Debbie. Hello, Alex and Debbie. Welcome.
Morning, everyone.
If you could put the next slide on, and we'll go straight to the film. This is an intro film showing some of the work that we've been doing over the last 8 months.
Yeah.
The time has now come for us all to do more. From this evening, I must give the British people a very simple instruction. You must stay at home.
Lockdown has presented all of us with many challenges, not least in Campbell Village Trust. We've long been committed to the notion of co-production, the idea that collectively the solutions are held within. If we harness our skills and use them creatively, then anything is achievable. But shared creativity is not easy, especially when we're not able to sit round the table, share coffee and cake, and spark each other's imagination. Like many in these times, we found the solution could be held in technology. In addition to our very own app, CVT Connect, we also looked at the emergence of Zoom and thought about how can we use this to connect people together, even if they're no longer in the same location. A series of daily Zoom sessions soon started to take place.
Andrew's going to be my master chef, aren't you?
Of the Tigger one, because it has the dynamo.
Each of them being led by a person with a different passion or a different interest, something they could share that others could gain inspiration from.
There we go.
Yeah. Good morning, everybody. I'm Debbie. I'm a support worker and I'm part of the co-production team in Latchfield community. And this is Alex. Alex lives in Aspen. Yes, she lives in Aspen House in Latchfield community. Now, obviously, as everybody has realised, everybody's mental health has been taking a real battering during this lockdown. And here in Aspen, we're obviously in house bubbles, and we were chatting away one day, shall we do something around mental health? And straight away, Alex was right up there, yes, please, can we do something? So we worked together as a group, we co-produced this little booklet, a workbook around mental health, didn't we? And we came up with different ideas, and I put together a draft copy of a workbook, and I emailed it out to everybody across Larchfield and across all our other communities, so that the people we support in other communities could have a look at it and give me some feedback, so to keep it a completely co-produced piece of work. They gave me all the feedback, we put it all together, and we developed this wellbeing workbook, didn't we? Yes. And we then, with our Opportunity TV that we have at CVT, we then ran a 4-week course going through this workbook. We did it each week, going through different things, talked about what is mental health, how can we feel better, where do we go? And we put lots of different resources in there as well to help people. And during these sessions, it became apparent people were sharing some really, really, really personal stories of how much they were struggling. Some to the point that staff didn't really understand that they were struggling so much. So we helped. We worked through all these exercises, and Alex led on a lot of these things to do, didn't you? You showed people what to do. Yes. We practiced them before we delivered them, didn't we? And it was quite a good resource. So it became really good, and it was helping people, and everybody enjoyed it, didn't they, Alex? They all got stuck in and completed the workbook, so that was a really good piece of work. Could we have the next slide, please, Sam? There we go. And so, as following on from the workbook we did, because we knew people in different communities were struggling with different things, we then co-produced this survey. Very simple and easy, so there wasn't too much information and too many questions for everybody. And we've sent that out to everybody. We've sat and filled one, Alex filled one in. And the aim of this is to get to target specific areas to show where people are struggling in each community, so that we can offer exactly. It's hard, isn't it? Yeah. Does that make people get upset? So we've sent this survey out to everybody, hoping that they will complete that as honestly as they can. And once we get the information back, we'll collate it and we'll see where the areas need a bit more support. So that's currently out at the moment, and people are filling that in. So we're waiting for all that information to come back in, so we can see what's happening. Because we just realise people are struggling a lot more than they're letting on. People get upset. Yes, get really upset. And angry. Hey, yeah, that's it. So you get really angry and upset, John. So we realised this. So it's so that is currently out, and again, that was a fully co-produced. Everybody was involved in it. We sat and discussed what should be, shouldn't we? And so we sent that out to everybody. So we're hoping to get some really good information back from that, so we can target specific areas. And we have the next slide, please, Sam. And because the 4-week sessions were revealing just how bad some people were struggling, especially those that are more independent and not like in shared accommodation, we've decided, what do we do every week? On a Wednesday, what do we do? Talking about things. Exactly. We have a weekly drop-in session via Zoom. Tell everybody to grab a cup of tea, come and have a chat. We tell jokes. We have a laugh, don't we? Yeah, we do lots of different things so that people just have this weekly drop-in. And numbers have been growing. I think on yesterday's session, I believe we had 23 people joined in the session. A lot of new faces came with, so it's a really valuable resource, I think, that we can get people. That's right, so we can keep in contact with all the people, and if they're feeling lonely or upset, they come and have a chat to us. And if anything in particular comes up that they struggle with, we work together to find exercises and stuff to help people, don't we? Yeah. So it's been a really, really good session, and that they're running until they're no longer needed. But by the looks of things, I think it's possibly going to be a very long project because people do need that. Could we have the next slide, please? For another one after that? Oh no. Right. So what I'd like to do then, Alex would like to show you some of the things that we have been doing and what she's been doing. So one of the first things she's done, what's this, Alex? Show it up to the camera. So this is a happy box. And all it is a shoe box covered in paper, and Alex has coloured it all in, bright things. And in this happy box, Alex puts things in there that if she's feeling a little bit sad, she'll have a look in there and it makes her happy. So show one of your pictures. So she's got different things in there. Okay, let's have a look. The rainbow picture, yeah? Right. So I'll hold it up for Alex. So I think you can all see this rainbow picture. On each colour, Alex has written a memory. So for her orange, she's got Chris. Now Chris is Alex's boyfriend. And obviously because of this lockdown, she can't see him. Let me put a picture of Alex and Chris. There we go. That's the times when he could come round for tea and they could spend some time together. So Alex has got that in her box, so she knows if she's feeling a bit upset and she's missing Chris, she'll just get his picture out and she'll think about him. Yeah? That's right. So, but you talk to him every day, don't you? Yeah. 7 o'clock every night, phone call with Chris. So she keeps in contact. But Alex puts different things in this box, and I say it's so simple to make. Everybody can do one. So put whatever you like in there. It could be like Alex with pictures and colours, or it could be like a scent, something that makes you feel better. So Alex has made that. And we've got one little exercise that we'd like to share with everybody as well, and we'd love it if you join in because it's so quick, it's so easy. So it's called, can you remember what it's called? Mindful Stop. So this would be good for those people who work on screen a lot. So it's called a mindful stop. So we sit with our back straight, and then what do we do first? Stop. Temporarily stop what you're doing. Then what do we do? Three. We take 3 deep breaths. So we breathe in through our nose and out through our mouth. So 1, 2, 3. And then the O in stop stands for observe. So what we think we've got to do, bring your mind in, to settle your mind, look around you, name 3 things you can see or that you can hear. So it'll take your mind off your work and just calm your mind down. So what can we see, Alex? We can see the guinea pig. We can hear outside. We can hear the birds outside, and we can see everybody else. Yes. Yeah? So once you've brought your mind in and you've calmed that mind, the P stands for proceed with a smile. So you carry on with your day. So if everybody, as I said, especially you guys that work on screen a lot, after a couple of hours you have to get fed up, think of your mindful stop and just do that for a couple of minutes, calms your mind, and it's really good, isn't it? Now we've got one more special guest to show you. Get her, Alex? Alex has got a special guest, and this little special guest joins us on every one of our Wednesday sessions. Get her out then. Right, are you ready for this extra special guest? So this is, put her up to the camera, Daisy Pig. And Daisy likes to join our sessions every Wednesday. She says good morning. She puts a smile on everybody's face. So Daisy joins us.
Because Suki died.
Yeah. Right, do you want to pop back in there? Originally, Alex had 2 guinea pigs, Daisy and Suki, and unfortunately, about 3 weeks ago, Suki died. So because Daisy was really lonely and sad, she comes to our drop-in sessions with everybody else. So everybody looks forward to seeing her. Yes. Everybody says good morning, and Daisy likes to say hello to everybody, doesn't she? Yeah. Wednesday morning, 10 o'clock. Grab your cuppa and join us. Yeah. Brilliant. Well, thank you for listening to us. We hope you enjoyed that.
Thank you both very, very much. Thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you for reminding us to take a moment out to stop for 2 minutes. That's fantastic. So I'm really aware of time. So I'm not going to give us a chance to ask loads of questions or to see the guinea pig again, because I suspect that's going to be really hard for my colleagues from Dorset People First to follow. I'm so sorry I didn't know you were following a guinea pig. You might never forgive me. So thank you very much, Alex and Debbie. That was brilliant. But now we've got Ellie, Chris, and Zoe. Is that right? Have I got that right? Yes, fantastic. And you've got some slides to show us as well, haven't you? Have you got an animal that you're going to show as well?
No animal.
You have to be impressive, aren't you, to make up for that, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, so let me find you the presentation there. Fantastic. Here you go. Thank you.
Well, I'll just let Ellie start, take over.
Yeah.
Ellie, would you like to start it?
Yeah, we'll start. Creative ways to keep busy during lockdown.
You want me to do this? There you go.
So here are some ways that members have created their own solutions to dealing with the pandemic and the lockdown.
Paul started writing letters to people he was missing. He even added stamped addressed envelopes to make it easier to people to respond. He also started colouring for the first time. Paul thought it was a good time to try something new.
Yeah, I've been learning how to cook different recipes, and here I'm cooking a pizza.
Emily has been working in a care home during the pandemic. She is a key worker hero. In her free time, she has enjoyed walking her dogs.
Matthew has spent time learning to do housework around the home. This has helped him become more independent.
Kerry has learned how to make soda bread and have more plant-based diet by making vegetarian meals. These are new skills will help her lead a healthier lifestyle.
William's been working on jigsaws to keep busy. He wasn't used to not working and decided to try something new with his time off. Now he's working again in the town gardens. He's been blowing leaves off the pavements to keep us safe.
Monthly Contact magazine. Members have helped us create a Connect magazine, which is posted out to 150 plus adults with learning disabilities in Somerset and Dorset. We put it together so members could be kept updated with what their friends have been up to. We have 2 pages dedicated to updates, photos and messages for our people.
Yeah, Paul was really missing being the DJ to our monthly discos, so he now has his own music page in the Connect magazine and picks 10 songs each month for people to listen to.
The Contact magazine includes art and craft activity, recipe, word searches, sport the difference, relaxation activity, articles written by members.
Thank you very much. That was brilliant, Ellie and Chris. That was fantastic. Chris, if I send you my address, you can send me a pizza if you really want to.
Yeah, I learnt it from scratch. I did it from scratch.
Did you? Brilliant. And I shouldn't be really cheeky now and say I know Kerry evolved from when she used to be on the National Forum, and I mostly remember her in the bar. So you know, don't be telling her that I'm surprised she's eating.
No, Kerry's on the screen now.
Is Kerry here?
Thank you, Sam.
Hello, Kerry. I didn't realise you were here. Now you see,
Hello.
I'm telling tales about you and you're hearing me.
Hi, Kerry. Are you all right, Kerry?
Yes, thank you.
It's Alison, Kerry. Well, who's to see on National Forum?
Hello, you right?
Yeah, I'm all right. You?
Yes, I wasn't supposed to be on screen, but I was so interested in what I was hearing, I decided to connect myself.
It's nice to hear from Kerry.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Ellie and Chris, and thank you all of you. Does anybody have any questions or anything you really want to share before we finish today? No? So one of the things I saw earlier that I just want to pick up is Sarah mentioned about a campaign about vaccination, going back to what Chris said about people being included in the vaccination. So some people from the social history group at the Open University have written a letter that today, whilst we are all chatting to each other, colleagues from Speak Up are making into easy read heroes.
Yeah.
They're gonna, and we will send it out through our networks, and it's a letter that self-advocacy group or self-advocates or any of you can send to your MPs as part of a bit of a campaign to say we think people should have the vaccination, if that's what you think. So we'll get it out to you all as soon as we can, and it'll be on our website and our social media and stuff. But I know that that was really important. And I also saw Julian talked about some people with Down syndrome have been told that they couldn't go to work or to day activities and stuff. And I would remind all of you that that is an individual assessment, isn't it, Julian? And I think the Down Syndrome Association have got lots of resources, is that right?
Yes, we've developed a little, it's called a social media card, I think, that's being amplified by various government teams. But it is basically, it's important that adults know about the potential for them being at increased risk, but then it's for them to make a decision as what they wish to do or not to do. And it's not for people to be making sort of blanket decisions about people not attending college or day services or going to work. So it's just sharing that message, really.
Brilliant. Would you, Julian, would you like email us that card so we could send it to everybody on this? Is that all right with you? So we can get it out to everybody through this group. That'd be brilliant. Okay. It is now bang on 11:30. We had a little slide then that said if any of you want to share anything, just if you make a little PowerPoint slide like the others that people have shared with us today, or one or two, we'll add it to all the resource that people have shared today. And thank you all so much for what you've done, for giving your time. I've had a really great hour and a half.
It's been very good.
And really different. Yeah, well, what it reminds me about, Kerry, what it reminds me about is this, what everybody is doing makes a contribution. We need all those different things, don't we? We need Mary to be doing the hard stuff of looking at what's happened when somebody dies and working out what we can learn. We need Chris to be doing graphs so we understand what might help us all keep safe.
What's happening?
We need, but we also need people to be learning to cook. We need mindfulness from, colleagues at CVT. We need all of that. We need Debbie and Alex to be doing that with us. We need that. It all makes a difference. So thank you all so very, very much. Take care of yourselves.
I've saved all your comments on chat.
Superb. Thank you. Thank you all for coming. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, Sam.
Bye. See you soon, I hope.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.